along with the feeling that something is wrong, which is your system, your internal guiding mechanism telling you that something is wrong, and along with the feeling that something bad is going to happen, which is actually like your system recognizing a pattern that is recurring and that you are actually adapting to but you're not aware of. So it's basically telling you that like this is the pattern, and as it adapts, it adapts in such a way that it is trying to avoid these negative experiences and this dysfunctionality that is in the relationship. So it could be like starting to hide things from your partner, or starting to feel really bad about yourself. That's really common. So one thing that people in dysfunctional relationships are doing that they're not aware of is that they start changing, like their patterns of behavior change completely. So for instance, if they are extroverts, I know people in this situation right now. So if you're an extrovert, you become like introverted instead. If you are like this other person I know, they're very like organized and very on time and very disciplined. So what is happening with them is that they are losing, their concept of time, their concept of their own self-worth, and they're changing, their patterns of behavior are changing. So for instance, if they would be ready on time before, now they're getting involved in arguments with their spouse or their partner, and it's taking them like, they're not doing things the way they used to, and it's like the change is very drastic. And of course, like when we get married or when we are in a romantic relationship, if we are living with this person or otherwise, our lifestyles can change because we're forming this union with this person, and accordingly we can start behaving differently, or a routine can change. But what is different about this is that like um, it's like becoming or being who you are not. So it's like the opposite of who you really are. And then it's also like, it's more like the relationship is causing you to change yourself in such a drastic way to just be able to fit into it. And that in itself is so dysfunctional that unless it's like reciprocal and something you guys mutually agree upon, it's so like toxic that you're giving up parts of yourself to be with someone else, and they don't really know about it and you don't even know about it, but it's happening, and your patterns of behavior are changing. So you could be like, so what is the difference here, I think, is people cannot tell if they're doing it out of their own volition, if they're doing it voluntarily, or if it's because of another person. Because there may or may not be guilting and shaming happening at the same time. So that person may be guilting you, shaming you. They may also be like isolating you from people by lying to you about what people are saying about you, or some interaction they say that happened that didn't actually happen, or it didn't happen that way. So there are many ways in which they can sort of change your behavior, especially if they're abusive. Otherwise, if you are in like a relationship that is dysfunctional, or your attachment styles clash, then you can have the same patterns, and this happens a lot with opposing attachment styles, that you have these same patterns where your behavior is changing. You feel like you can't do anything right. You feel like fatigue all the time. You feel emotional fatigue, feel physical fatigue. You don't feel like doing anything, because eventually, like when someone tells you, or whatever you try in the relationship doesn't work, you get the message that nothing is going to work. Whatever I'm doing is just not working. So over time, you just like, your brain just kind of like gives up on everything, or it can give up on some things at a time, and then that can have a snowball effect and grow from there, and gradually like keep increasing. So there are these telltale signs of abusive and dysfunctional and toxic relationships that I just talked about. The people don't know they are happening, but they do happen all the time. And just like people think that they're doing it because they've started a new life and they're in a new phase, and this and that. But I think there's like a lot of shame and guilt in the decision they're taking if they are changing, or if they are like not going out to meet people, they meet their friends, or just doing things that they used to. So the difference between like healthy change that can totally be like, you could totally become the opposite, and that's okay if that's what you really want. But the difference here is that there's a lot of guilt and shaming involved, and it could be subtle, it could be like direct, or it could be like your fear of disappointing this person. But again, you're not showing up as you really are, and you're not being your real self, which is not great for any relationship. Or just, sacrificing yourself for a relationship where you're not, observing your boundaries. And the feeling, if it's really strong, that you cannot do anything right, that really means that usually like it's coming from the relationship. Of course, there may be other instances, so I urge you to examine the dynamics behind your relationship. But it could be coming from that relationship where whatever you do, or if you have wants and needs and you're trying to get them met, or you're trying to make the other person happy, and rather than being happy for your happiness or for the things you do for them, or trying to find a solution to find better ways to meet both your needs, instead what is happening is this person is criticizing you, this person is demeaning you, they're trivializing your efforts. They're saying that this is not good enough, it doesn't mean anything, it doesn't make me happy. But they're also not providing solutions. They're also not looking for a way to negotiate with you to find something that works for the both of you. So there's all this happening, and I just felt like dressing up a little and wearing this, so I did. So there's all this happening, and it really helps to be aware of what is happening, rather than just thinking that this is just, I'm just feeling depressed for no reason, and beating yourself up about it more. I've really experienced this, and being with people who are not supportive, who are critical, who actually use things you tell them in confidence against you. All of these are gestures that are disrespectful, who don't listen to you when you're trying to talk to them, who stonewall you, who like give you the silent treatment, who don't take your feelings and wishes seriously, who don't try to find solutions, but they want to blame you, and they want to keep on blaming you, they want to point fingers, but they don't want to take any responsibility. So usually, like in any relationship, it takes both people to make it work, and it takes both people to make it worse. So of course, like, they must be having a contribution even if they're not willing to accept what it is. So all these things are signs of disrespect. If they do not prioritize the relationship, if they do not prioritize you at all, so if they're addicted to something else like work or something, and you're the person who's trying to get your needs met through that relationship and through them and contributing to it, but you're not getting anything back, then of course you're going to feel like more and more depressed over time, because you're like continuously like you're consistently trying to do the same thing. You're trying to find different ways and different strategies, and sometimes it could be like physical gifts, like whatever the person likes, or doing things for them, or trying to listen to them more, or trying to help them with other things. But whatever it is, it's not working, and it could be because this person doesn't want it to work. So there's people who are abusive or avoidant. They basically don't want the relationship to be deep and meaningful. They want to be able to abuse you, or they are not aware of it, but they are trying to distance themselves from you. Either way is like they're actively doing things to make sure your needs are not met, and they might not be aware of it, they might be aware of it. Whatever it is, it makes it very difficult to actually have your real needs met. So they're not on the same page. They don't want to change, they don't want to adapt, they don't want to understand. And if you're just trying to talk to them and you hear them blaming you again and again and again, It's usually like they're not even being honest to themselves. So someone who's not honest to themselves and doesn't want to listen to someone else telling them about that, it makes it really hard to, get anywhere with that person. Because if they're not willing to listen, they're not. So they're also not willing to change because they have convinced themselves that they know what is happening, they're doing the best, or they know what's best. So, like, for them, your input and your feelings are kind of already marginalized, already not important, already annoying. So, like, parts of you are, like, annoying to them, and they're not taking you seriously, and it's just, like, superbly disrespectful. And over time, it's going to wear down your self-esteem, whether you know it or not. It will affect you to a great deal. It will affect how you see yourself, how you see relationships, how you see the world. It could, like, the world could start seeming like a much more cruel, heartless place where you don't feel safe, where you don't feel connected to others, where you don't feel like you belong. Because they have sort of manufactured these insults, they've manufactured evidence against you, your partner. And you've also probably like engaged in this game as well, where you're like both swinging insults at each other. But at the end of the day, you're both unhappy, and usually it's like love avoidance or the narcissists who get their way to a great extent in relationships. So it could be that that's happening to you. You could, on the other side, you could also be with like people who are love addicts. But usually, like, love addicts do try to make it work. Of course, they have their own difficulties and challenges, so it could be like not having boundaries, not reinforcing those boundaries sufficiently. But I know that they do try. So, like, that's at least some kind of willingness exists already, without you having to nurture it, because having to nurture some kind of like to getting someone to cooperate in something that involves changing themselves and the relationship is just like a real big challenge, and someone who's not really ready to do that, who doesn't really believe there is a need, or who's avoiding their own self because they're in denial, they don't want to face their own fears, they're not going to be willing to open up in therapy. What is probably going to happen is you're going to go there and you're probably going to start arguing like the way you do in real life. And therapist is just going to be like, okay, let's calm down for a second. So that's all I wanted to share. So like make sure that the person you're with is actually willing to do all the things they're saying they are willing to do, or all the things that they are representing to you that they are willing to do. And you can actually see it in all the things that they're doing, that they think about you when they make decisions, they think about your opinion before doing things that are major and impacting your life and your relationship with them. So there are all these things, that all these signs. So the red flags here would be that you're not being yourself, you're just like acting completely different to what you used to be a very short time ago, without making a conscious decision, or even if it is a conscious decision to be different. There is a lot of guilt and shame or just negative emotions behind it, rather than positive emotions, that I want to change and I want to be better and I want to have a great life. Rather than that, there is a lot of like unresolved emotion, whether it's jealousy or just like having disappointed your partner, or just being ashamed of yourself and your past, wanting to hide parts of yourself, or just like being made to feel bad for who you are over a period of time. And that can really like affect the self so much that it will take decades, if not, it will take years, if not decades, to get over that. So before you go further with this, I know it's difficult to leave. I've been there. But I think it's better than trying to, just like letting someone disintegrate, destroy your self-esteem, your self-worth, your self-confidence, and then make it like 5 times or 10 times as hard to function in the world. And something you have to deal with for the next 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is, but years probably. So I don't think it's worth it. Is it worth it to be in love? Because love should not have this cost of harming you to that extent that it leaves you like crippled emotionally for like years and years, that it affects how you see yourself and you do not like yourself anymore, and you just like hate everything about yourself and the world and eventually the partner. So you can have really extreme emotions about them, or you can just feel like uh, really uncomfortable and bad about being with them, because after you have all these negative experiences it becomes very difficult to, you know, just like have like, you know, a normal conversation or just to like have dinner again. Especially like it is difficult when there has been no resolution and those arguments just keep going on and on and on, and it just feels like there's just like this kind of vicious cycle and looping in the relationship where you go like you argue and you talk about this that, but in the end there is like no conclusion, there is no solution, there's nothing that you have agreed to try and you're going to work on. And because like, you know, if something doesn't work you can try something else. So that's like the mature way to problem solve, versus trying to blame each other and trying to, you know, just take each other down and just think of all the things, you know, that are like bad about this person and you can use against them. That is like so terrible and destroys trust. It just throws it out the window, because it's really hard to trust someone who just uses like things you tell with like confidence, and that is like the most vulnerable parts of you, and they go out and, you know, like tell everyone, and then later why would you trust them? Even if you do, why would you feel good about it? You may feel good about it, but you may have like other negative feelings, because your brain and yourself, you know that I've already tried this and it's already gone badly, and there's nothing to make me feel differently. Like there's nothing that's happened that's different from before, so why should I think that anything is going to be different now? Okay, bye guys. See you soon.